Liam, summer is in full swing, and today we're taking another look at Fastly's monthly DDoS weather report, this time for July. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Excited to be here. It's never dull in the world of DDoS. July was no exception. David, I've been reviewing our newest July 2025 DDoS report. And as I read it, the main story this month seems to be less about total volume and more about the nature of attacks. I was wondering, can you tell us a bit more about the key trends found in the report and in particular, like what's that mean for enterprise customers?
Yeah, definitely. So there are three key trends that we found in this report. The first being, to your point, volume was down, especially in light of June's massive attacks. In June, we saw the largest attack of the year. And in July, what we found is that attack volume was far less. In fact, all of July's attacks could be fit in the one massive attack that we saw in June. The second trend that we saw is that while attack volume is down, through the lens of both industries and company size, what we find is that it looks almost the same as what we saw in previous reports. Even though there's less volume, the people who are getting attacked basically identical, which leads us to a question that we're still trying to uncover. It's like, is this a bias based on Fastly's customer base? Partially, I'm sure, but also is it just a reflection of customers just being targeted no matter how many attackers are coming? Like, while there may be less attackers, that smaller group is still going to hit the same customers. That's something we're continuing to monitor for future reports. And the third trend that we noticed is, in a slower month, we took an opportunity to look through what are enterprise customers seeing, right? Every single month that we've been doing this report, we find that enterprises have the most volume. But is that because they just consistently receive massive attacks at a higher frequency? Or is it just a handful of really, really big attacks that just skew things out of proportion as far as volume goes? And what we found is that in looking at the median attack volume, SMBs, the smallest customers, actually receive the highest median attack volume. When we look at enterprises, they're in second place. But what we find is that only 0.7% of all attacks make up 63% of the volume. These are those like 1 billion plus request attacks that are hitting folks. So a ton of crazy insights, but those are probably the top three.
Hmm. Really interesting to see those trends. I'm curious. The report talks about how important it is to be able to validate efficacy. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the importance of being able to explain why a block occurred, and particularly for automated systems like Fastly DDoS protection.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked and we've discussed the importance of automation in the past, right? These attacks happen incredibly quickly, and it really necessitates an automatic solution, like Fastly DDoS protection, but there are a number of other ones out in the market, right? When we think about that automation, I think the first thing that came to my mind is like, we got to make sure this thing is right. And so in the past, for Fastly, we released a detailed rules dashboard that folks can go in and they can understand what are the attacks that are being hit. They can adjust the default status of those rules just in case they want to maybe move it from logging to blocking mode, et cetera. But as we think about like validating that efficacy, what's really important there is that like when we think about the biggest attacks that are happening in the market, those are relatively easy to kind of uncover, right? If you see a massive spike, you're going to eventually, maybe not immediately, like if you're doing it manually, find what's happening there, but it'll definitely happen, right? The attributes are spiking so far beyond everything that you normally see. It's those smaller ones that are much harder. And we recently we released our rules dashboard, and through it, customers can dig into every rule that's being used on their statuses or every rule that's being used on their services, excuse me. And they can understand, was this rule used in other DDoS attacks? And as you build that history of attacks hitting a certain customer or hitting your services, you can quickly understand that, oh, this is a pattern. I can feel very good about this block. Whereas without it, a little bit more nebulous, right?
Yeah, I've uncovered a number of interesting trends using that new rules dashboard. It's particularly useful how it's closely integrated into the ability to turn individual rules on or off. I think if we like kind of bring it all together, what would you say is the most important takeaway from this month's DDoS report?
Yeah, the most important takeaway, I think playing on that point 0.7 that we looked at for enterprises, right? 0.7% of attacks make up 63% of volume. That means that there's another 99.3% of attacks that are not necessarily designed to take you offline, impact performance, etc. Instead, they're used either likely as a distraction or even a wall attack, something that we've been seeing more and more of, where an attacker knows or realizes that maybe they can't take off a massive enterprise. They can't knock them offline or impact performance, but what they can do is drastically inflate their cloud costs, right? And so, as we think about the biggest takeaway, especially for enterprise organizations, but almost everyone's operating the cloud at this point, the consideration that I would say for all of you and all of us is keep in mind that these smaller attacks, while maybe not damaging from like a performance perspective, they can be just as impactful to your bottom line and to your operational budget.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, those trends are disturbing. It's important to have solutions in place. Well, great. That was an interesting walk through the report. Appreciate it, David.
Yeah, of course, Liam. For folks listening to the recording, we have a full deep dive on our blog on fastly.com. Give it a read. Liam, thank you so much for making the time again. I look forward to discussing next month's report with you soon.
Likewise.